We've got some
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. Legendary guest alert. Today we have e-commerce royalty in the Content is Profit house. We first connected with him on Clubhouse, and we managed to get him on the show thanks to the one and only Bart Miller, episode 56. Go check him out.
That is true. We all should have worn a cowboy hat in today's honor, just for Bart. Either way, today's guest is a business catalyst. He is one of those entrepreneurs that move fast and is lethal, and he does at what he does. We could even say he is a ninja.
I see what you did there, Fonzie. Good stuff. Okay, and you're right. Today's guest has built 176 new Shopify sites in 9 months. And he has a radio show since 2011 in which he has interviewed entrepreneurs such as Tim Ferriss and Neil Patel. Not to mention that he is a record holder on what? I have no idea. We'll definitely have to ask him as soon as we start the show.
I know. I'm so. And I think it's so epic that he had, Tim Ferriss, Neil Patel, and he's been publishing since 2011. Whew. How epic is that? I'm so pumped up. Yeah. Please welcome host of the Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio, amazing father of 4, and the Biz Ninja himself, Tyler Jorgenson.
I'm loving the hype, man. This is amazing. Killing
Let's
it.
Go.
Dude, Tyler, I was afraid we weren't going to be able to find you. We were hiding in the shadows like a ninja or something like that, But
he's still working that joke.
Sneaking out.
I know. Is that joke worth it, Tyler? I'm just saying.
It's interesting. I started using the Biz Ninja term back in 2011 when I started my radio show, and I feel like since then everyone's become like they've really used the ninja term. So we still hang on to it. We're still one of the early ninjas.
I love it.
That's
I know.
Pretty cool. But I actually Googled it up. I put define ninja in Google, and the informal definition is a person who excels in a particular skill or activity. It makes total sense, Tyler, after looking at your story and all the things that you have done and created. You are definitely a ninja, man. You are a contemporary ninja, I guess.
Contemporary ninja. I like that.
Yes. Dude, Tyler, since, I was not familiar with your show, with your radio show. You've had amazing people in there. Alex Hormozi, personal favorite interview. So, there's amazing stuff in there. And obviously we'll dive into your show. But for those who don't know you, do you want to give us a little bit of your backstory? Like how did this, the publishing start? Like what are you doing with Shopify and just creating amazing momentum, right? With the people that you help?
So I've really been an entrepreneur since I was a kid, like 5 years old. All the neighborhood kids got allowance. I didn't get allowance, but I still wanted to go to the corner store and buy sweets, right? So I realized there's a first problem. If I want sweets, I need money. Let's figure it out. So I'd pick flowers from the old lady around the corner. I'd pick them from her front yard. I'd wrap them up in a little bouquet and I'd sell them to her, right? So they were her own flowers. But it was the beginning, even at 5 years old, I realized if there's something that you want, you can whine about it or you can find some kind of a solution. And then, 12 years old, I started, I had a paper route for years. And then I launched my first legal business when I was 18 years old. And then 22, I bought a restaurant. And then, by 25, I owned a mortgage company. And I was always looking for that next thing. So when the economy crashed in 2008, 2010 timeframe, I got into e-commerce because of the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And I built a business that would be able to really run without me for the most part and really have the 4-Hour Workweek lifestyle. And I realized when I did that I loved the idea of creating something and launching it. That's my favorite part. Yeah. So now I come into other businesses and help them really get that catalyst, that big leap of momentum.
Wow, I love the timestamps on the story. And let me tell, I do have a very specific question about this. Did the lady knew it was her flowers, the ones that you were selling to her?
Absolutely. And she was a repeat customer until I moved out of the area 8 years later.
Wow,
I love
how
it.
amazing! I love how how supportive the community can be in those aspects when they see a kid, someone
Yeah.
trying to be resourceful. At the end of the day, you're like, how can I solve my problem of getting candy? And then you started doing it.
Yeah.
I'm
It,
curious.
it was nice. It came to a point where I would show up and I didn't have to sell her something. She would just give me candy or sweets or, cookies or something. Right. So
Look at that! Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
The trust.
Were your parents entrepreneurs as well?
no, but my dad is entrepreneurial, like minded. But I think I have a much different or more aggressive risk appetite, right? I'm willing to be like, I'm overly comfortable with risk, where I think some people who have the ideas of being self-employed or being an entrepreneur, they're not ready to take that level of risk. You've got to be willing to go to the bottom.
Yeah.
So okay, so on the risk side of things, right? Like, have you always been like that? Because I relate with your story on the candy side of things. For us, with soccer jerseys, like we will go to this market and we'll buy the shirts, let's say $5, and then we'll go to our school, and they were counterfeit shirts. They looked exactly the same, but then our friends will pay $25, and the original version was $60, right? So it was a win-win for everybody, right? So I relate with that part.
Not for everybody.
Well,
Adidas and Nike, they weren't
Not
very
for
happy.
Adidas, right? Adidas and Nike, not so much.
It's okay. Sorry, Adidas. Sorry, Nike.
Everybody involved. It was a win for everybody involved.
Exactly. Good. Yeah. Thank you guys for putting me in my place. Anyways, but I relate with that, right? Because it came out of the need because our parents weren't like, we're not giving you money. Go figure it out, right? And that was the solution. And then we sold also like these CDs with mixed music. We will burn the CD and like sell it in store with the mixes and stuff like that. So I relate with that side of things. But risk on our case, or at least in my case, I don't know, Fonzie, but it has never been that thing, because for us, the North was always soccer. And then we kind of took those at the athlete side of things. We were D1 soccer players and we were in Europe as well. And now we kind of brought some of that into the entrepreneurial journey in the last 5 years. But risk was never like, I was always kind of scared of it, right? Like for you, were you always like, let's do it, right? I don't really, what was your journey?
So, yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I'm a family man. I've got 4 kids and a family. And so risk is different, I think, at different stages of life. So, when I was 18 and I started my first retail company selling snowboards, it was really moderate risk. It wasn't aggressive risk. I would, I had a list of suppliers and somebody would pick out their first choice and second choice. Then I would go to my supplier and buy it. I floated the client's money, really, really low risk, right?
Yeah.
As companies get bigger, the risk increases, but I'm still very like, I'm open to risk. I'm willing to do it, but I'm not blind, right? Like I'm not going to take the big thing I learned from 2000, like the Great Recession, is like, I need to have a war chest, because even if I'm willing to take risk, like I've got a team of 20 people, I'm not going to risk their stuff. I'm not going to risk their livelihoods, right? So I've got to be able to communicate in advance to them. And I mean, risk doesn't always pay out. I mean, I got hammered in the recession. It was a horrible time. And so but at the same time, like I knew, as hard as that was, that there was another opportunity that could take me out of it, right? And so I think for me, it's mitigating risk, but then just realizing we don't have one opportunity. We don't have one, like we're like the anti-M&M, right? We don't have one shot, one opportunity, right? There's a lot of things coming our way, and it really comes down to like, okay, that one didn't work, or I did that one wrong and I didn't get the results I wanted. Learn and move to the next thing.
Yeah. Well, I love that. First, I'm gonna start using the anti-M&M. I don't know if I said his name right. I say M&M like the chocolates, but we all know we're talking about the rapper here. Don't worry, Tyler. I will definitely say I learned that from you. But from that, what you just shared with us, I have 2 specific questions. Right. The first one is, in your eyes, what is aggressive risk, right, for entrepreneurs? Whether should they avoid it? Obviously, it depends. It's a little subjective, I feel, on people's situation. And for example, I don't have a family of my own. I don't have kids like my brother. So probably
I'm your family.
so probably
Okay,
I could take a little bit of more risk right on that side. And then
Sure.
the other one is, how do you that mindset on looking on opportunities? How do you keep your eyes open, and instead of so I feel like a lot of people just
Yeah.
going like, this is my path, like I can only do this, instead of where are the problems that I can probably solve and help people in here.
So there's a couple things to unpack there, and I think one of them is like, how do you pursue opportunities? And you mentioned Alex Hormozy earlier. He's a friend of mine, and he and I were talking once. And right before he launched, he really leaned in hard to gym launch and what he's doing now. And we were talking about the concept that it takes the same amount of energy to pursue a level 10 opportunity as it does to pursue like a level 2 or 3 opportunity. So like, you might as well be picky about which one you're going to go all in on.
Yeah.
And so, but also like, that might be predicated upon how much risk you can stomach. So like, at the time, he and Layla weren't married. He didn't have kids. Like, he could take a higher level of risk than I could take as a father of 4 who, had different things. Now, it doesn't mean, that's not an excuse to not play big, but it means we're playing with a different deck, right? And that's okay. We have different hands to play. So, he was able to go completely all in, where like, what I have is, I'm like, okay, I'm going to play pretty aggressive on like a level 5 opportunity, get that to a point of stability, and then like put that on autopilot and go chase level 10. Right. And that's just because I'm not willing to go back to like, I'll go to 0, but I won't put my family to 0 ever again.
Yeah.
I
I relate, and thank you for that, right? Because when we first started the business, it was obviously the two of us, and we did stickers, and then we did screen printing T-shirts, and then it evolved to social media, and then video production, and now we do all this stuff with content, and it's been all fun, right? But I remember about a year ago, or like September 2019, it was the first time that we made a very big investment for us, right? I took basically a $40,000 personal loan to quit my job so we could do this full time at the time, right? My wife definitely agreed with that, which is awesome. I thank you, Katie. And then, but then we went to this event and we hired first coach ever for 25 grand. So that chopped my loan for half.
Yeah.
And Katie did not know this about like almost like 3 months ago, right? So she's like, thank God it all worked out, right? But that was my risk, right? And I remember like, it was a really challenging decision to make at the time, because first we didn't have the cash flow, but that coach was exactly what we needed to move things to the next level, right? So is there a framework that you might use to assess different opportunities? For us was literally like, deep in ourselves, we knew that was the path that we needed to take for X amount of reasons. Like, we were very indoctrinated in what they did. Like, we were getting results at some level, and we're like, that's exactly what we need. But is there a framework that you might follow where like, hey, I spotted an opportunity, level 3, level 5, level 6. Should I run it through this framework? If it, comes out great, I take it. Or is it just by feeling?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a framework. I think what's like, when you're referring to like whether or not to work with a coach or whether or not who to hire, I don't look at those as necessarily business opportunities as much as just strategic moves within the opportunity, right? Your opportunity was the business that you're pursuing, right? And then you had strategic decisions of how to move within that. So for me, like, the opportunity of what type of business or what type of thing to pursue, it comes down to a couple of factors. Like, one, is it already in your wheelhouse, right? So if somebody is trying to make the move from employee to self-employed, or from self-employed to business owner, right? If they're trying to make that shift, you have to say like, do I have the skills to run this as a business instead of as a job? Because they're not the same thing. You could be a phenomenal graphic designer. Doesn't mean you should own a graphic design company unless you have the stomach to be really, you have to then start leaving the graphic design, right? And saying, okay, I'm going to hire people to do that if you're truly going to be a business owner. So kind of like, step one is, do you have the chops to do the job or the business you're trying to pursue? And if you don't, then okay, like, are you going to hire that, or are you going to partner that, right? Do you have the resource to either go hire those expertise, or go, or just bring partners in? And I don't think you should ever bring a partner in that is someone that you could have just paid and hired, right? The partner should be someone that fills a higher level need than just a task. It should be like, I need this to have a balance in a higher level resources. So kind of chipping away at that and coming back to the last thing, I think step one in that framework of like, how do I choose which opportunity is just realize two things. There's not just one opportunity, and it's okay to pursue an opportunity and then abandon it. So like, I'm a big believer of like, start. Just don't waste time in getting the first like brick laid in down the road, right? Just get it started, but then be super honest with yourself and maybe set up like several gates. Like, okay, I'm going to pursue this up until I get my first sale. And then I'm going to reevaluate if I'm enjoying it. Cause you may not, you may realize like, oh, this was a grass is greener situation. I don't actually enjoy this business. And then another one would be like, okay, so typically what we do in e-commerce is we say, the first gate is the first sale. That's not your mom or your sister or your friend, right? Like the first stranger that buys from you, then getting to $1,000 a day in sales. And then, then getting to like 100 grand, like 6 figures plus a month. Beyond that, it comes down to just how aggressive you're going to be. So each of those gates, like it's also okay to look back on the business and say, does this suck? Like, do I like this? Yeah. So, and that can either be a shift of the business or a shift of how you're running it. And so to me, like just keeping the mindset is like, there's not just one opportunity. There's not just one business, one e-com store, one, podcast topic, whatever. There's countless.
Yeah.
That's the first framework.
I love the pivoting mindset, and the fact that someone with such an experience is sharing openly about, hey, it's okay to pivot, because I feel like so many people just get stuck into hammering that opportunity even if like nothing's in there, and then they just get drained and they don't get anywhere, right? And at the end they just want to either quit or not even pivot. It's like either totally quit or just keep at it until it magically works. And I'm curious now, because in the intro we said, right, that you have built over 170 Shopify stores in the last 9 months. Have those been part of a pivoting, I guess, a strategy for you? Has those been for clients? I'm extremely curious now.
Yeah, that specific project was something that I worked on with a team for an investment firm. And so my job in that was to come up with the idea, the domain, the branding, the build out, and then the first batch of products. And then I would hand it over to our marketing team. I have done a lot more than that number of stores for other clients and other things. And then I've also I've sold 5 of my own brands, and I'm constantly looking at new ones to launch. And so right now, like what I did for the last year is I said, hey, I'm not going to launch anything. We're going to focus on our agency where we help other people scale their e-com brands.
Yeah.
For all of 2020, 2021, we'll start looking at opportunities again. So I'm right at this point where we're starting to evaluate, okay, I could pursue this product and brand, or I could maybe do this one, or maybe, neither of these are big enough play. We'll just wait, like no rush. Yeah. But, so I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I see a pattern in there that can be useful for people, right? And we often talk about this with content, is do the content at first, right? Put it out there. That's the most important part. And then you can go back, revisit, reflect on that content, learn from it, right? If you didn't feel good doing it, right? If you think you failed, and I'm doing air quotes in here, we call them samples, right? You can actually learn from it and then do another piece of content. And it's a cycle. And it's the same cycle I'm seeing right now with your business, right? You're like, okay, we were doing this, right? We reflected. We're like, no, let's transition into agency. And now in 2021, it's like, okay, we did it. Let's reflect again. Where is the next part? So I think it's like a constant circle where we're going about executing, reflecting, learning, and then executing again. And we just go all over.
Yeah, totally agree.
No, I like it. Now in my head, I'm going, so Tyler, so where my head is at, like the last probably 3 weeks is been around framework, right? Because we on ourselves, like what we execute for our clients and what we do for us and for the show, it's a framework on how we thought the content should be produced, because we didn't have time, right? Like to execute, to the point that, when we first started selling it about 2 years ago, we had a meeting with a bunch of business owners, and they're like, where's your stuff, right? And we're like gut punch, right? And right now I would say, athletic was a Olympic medalist, right? That they have their coaches, and we can execute for you, and here are the results. But that comment felt really real at the time, because I wasn't doing it, right? Like I didn't feel like I had the experience and the confidence to potentially do that, right? So that's why this started, like after COVID stuff and before that, and there's that system. So lately, the word framework has been like, I'm the operator. If you haven't realized by that yet, like I'm the integrator. Is that what it is?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the dreamer.
Fonzie's the dreamer, right? Here. So it's like he comes up with the awesome ideas, and then I'm like, okay, how can we execute this consistently, right, with a team or ourselves, or what's the thing, right? So has that for like on the framework side for you, like on your show or on your business, I see there's a pattern there. Did you identify that from the very beginning, or how was your experience learning that lesson, if you actually learned that lesson, or was it just natural to you?
And are you talking about kind of that general like feedback loop that we're just talking? Is that the framework? Sure. I think it came from my desire to I love starting. And for a long time, I thought like, I need to go fix this weakness of that I'm not as good at running, right? I'm not as good at building things like, so I'm really good at taking a business to like the first $1 million, right? 0 to 100 grand a month. That's my sweet spot. Or if a business is stuck at like 30, 40, 50, okay, like how can we move it fast? And I've worked in a lot of industries. And so there's not many industries I can't help make that solution. And I used to see it as a weakness. And then I finally just said, you know what? No, like that's actually like my superpowers. There's so many people that suck at starting. They can't even get that. They're like, they'll be talking about starting an e-com store for years. And I'm like, you should have tried like 5 by now, but they can't even start. So like really like that framework came in from me just accepting where my strengths are. So like you recognizing you're an implementer and you're a dreamer, like, and being okay that you don't have every strength. That was the biggest thing for me. Like, I'm like, no, I'm good at starting. So I'm going to hire an implementer, and I'm going to hire an operations person. I'm going to hire, and I'm going to bring a team around me so I can do what I'm good at. I love just relationships. I love connecting. I love starting. I love having the ideas. And then, if the team gets stuck, I'm really good about, okay, here's how we're going to get unstuck. But then I'm going to trust them to do their job and just get the stuff done. Yeah. So it's not a framework of complexity. It's a framework of simplicity, of like lean into what you're good at and be willing to change, like be willing to pivot.
So I love this, Tyler. It actually reminds me of a story we heard about 0800 Got Junk. I don't know if you know about that company. I think one of the operators in that company, he these numbers, I don't remember the exact numbers, but let's say he grew the company from like 50 million to 100 million. And then he couldn't scale it past that. And they had to bring someone new. So the guy gave a talk where he was like, I was okay with it because I knew that was my power. Like, that is where I work the best, is when I grab companies in like the 50 million range and I can take them to 9 figures. And then they need somebody else that can do 9 figures and above, right?
They're all different skills for sure.
Yeah. So I love you sharing this, because in a sense, I feel like for me that was eye-opening, because I always thought if you have a business, you are, you ride it till you die, pretty much. Like you grow it until the end. And now I'm like, it is not like that, right? Like kind of like gives me permission on, perform where your strengths are. And then it's okay to hand it over to someone that is way better than you at that other step of the process.
And there's more and more. Oh, go ahead, Luis.
No. Well, I was just gonna mention, it just brings an immense amount of clarity, right? Like, and when you're starting up, you might not have that clarity, right? You might have to try different things to see what you like, what works, right? Like that's what we did with the agency. At first, it was like probably 9 different services, and then the feedback came back to the content side of things, right? And then within the content, the type of content that we do, right? So, but it started like that. And then once you accept that, you're like, oh, like I'm at peace with myself. I have massive clarity who I help, right? And then it's so easy to have that conversation now, because there's not going to be any friction inside of me. Hence, the conversation is going to be great. So I just want to add that comment in there. Continue, Tyler, please.
No, I mean, I think it's funny how often it comes down to just realizing a lot of the conversations we've had today come back to how a lot of times we want to apply the way that like the normal business world does things, right? So the normal career path, the normal, like get a job, work in that job, work up the ladder, right? But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to be a business owner, it's different. And the other way isn't bad, right? We need people to fill roles and do those things and thrive in that position. But if you're going to be an innovator, if you're going to be a creator, you've got to realize like you don't fit that mold. So stop applying those things over into your life. So it's like, okay, you grew a company and now you might realize you hate being a CEO, or you hate being the face of the company, right? There's no rule book. Like, just do what makes you feel most comfortable. Like, remove the friction points, remove the things, lean into momentum, and do it the way that works best for you. If that means, hey, I'm going to step out, I'm going to be the chairman of the board now of this company that I've built, and I'm going to let somebody else run it on the day to day. Cool. Yeah. Do whatever makes sense, do whatever fits. And then if that doesn't work, change it again. Because again, you don't have to stay married to one idea.
Incredible.
Yeah. You just said 3 of our favorite words. Remove the friction. We love those. I mean, those
smooth operator.
Yeah, those are so tied up to our story because of when we wanted to start publishing. Since we used to do videos for events and we have some of the equipment, and we were used to watching, these awesomely produced YouTube videos. When we started, we're like, we need to look like that. Let's add as much friction as we can before we actually publish anything. So we never got anything done. And it got to a day that we're like, okay, we created an internal challenge, 45 Live, which, shameless plug, we are doing it for everybody that wants to join. We're going to start February 8th, where we went 45 days in a row, right, publishing. But the way to do it was to remove the friction. So we just went for Facebook Live for 45 days in a row. It was as simple as that, right? So,
well, hold on.
Okay.
Fact check.
So hold on. And let's take a special timeout for a word from our sponsors. Where does somebody go to learn about your 45-day challenge?
Yes, like slide into DMs at Base Roscoe on Instagram. You can go to go45.live, I believe, Fonzie, right? Is that
it's not on yet.
It's not on yet, but it will be. So here's a quick parenthesis on that story.
We're doing literally the just start.
Just start on that, because
Good.
We've shared these stories so many times and people have been resonating, because that's the thing. Like, a lot of people add a lot of unnecessary friction at the very beginning before they start, right? There is a reason, Tyler, we do the show live. And I don't think we've chatted about this, but the reason we do it live is so we can be accountable for doing it. And we're like, we have to do it. We told people that we were going to do it, so we have to do it, right? And so that's the reason we've done more than 140 episodes by now, is because of that reason. And starting 45 Live, and the reason I scream fact check to Fonzie is because we said 45 days, but guess what? Guess how long we lasted? Like, this is a cool question. This is a good question.
So you're supposed to do it every day for 45 days?
Yes.
How long did you last? I don't know.
We lasted 15.
135. 15 days.
Thank you. You have been the most optimistic answer out there in the world.
Some people say
you.
like 3 days.
Yeah. But, it comes also, I understand where that's coming from, because you are consistent with your content, right? Like, you are more than 300 episodes in. You do it like almost every single day, right? You're out there sharing your message. Mm-hmm. For us, it was 15 days, but because we got results, we actually got like a massive sell out of it through a connection. And then we were implementing, and then we told ourselves that we were busy to not do it. And then we did season 2, and that's why the story kind of resonates. And now we're doing season 3 and see what's up, and people are joining, and it's going to be incredible. So thank you for allowing us to shameless plug this story. But to the point is about it's about the consistency, right? Moving forward and removing that friction so we can execute. And I think that's perfect transition, unless Fonzie has another very smart question.
Well, so I did wanted to make that transition into the content side of things with removing the friction.
It's like we're brothers.
Maybe, who knows? Okay. But Ty, I'm curious, because at the beginning you said that I think it was 2010 that you read the 4-Hour Workweek, and that's how you transition into the e-commerce space. And I know you've had Tim Ferriss in your show, which is absolutely amazing too. But I'm curious, what was it? What made you start the podcast itself? Because you started the podcast in 2011, right? So when you were starting this journey as well.
So it's a super weird story of how I started. So again, I'm actually, like, my show starts on the radio, actually plays on old school AM radio, and then it goes to podcast and everything else, right? So I had followed the 4-Hour Workweek. I'd launched my first e-commerce store. It was taking off. It had replaced my income and was scaling and all kinds of stuff. So one of the things that Tim Ferriss does is say, like, in the 4-Hour Workweek, he goes through like, hey, here's how to get more media, contact radio stations and television and see if you can buy remnant, like unsold inventory at the last minute.
Yeah.
So I'm like, cool, I'll just call up all the local stations and see if I can get it. And so I ended up getting on the phone with the owner of one of the local stations. And I told him what I was looking for, and he started asking questions, and he's like, man, this is amazing. Like, this is really a cool story. You should come into the station. And so he like threw me on somebody else's show as a guest. The next week I was live on air with my own show. And it was just like, it was really just this weird, in hindsight, I don't know how it happened. It was probably just like me, I was in a yes mood. Yeah, that sounds cool. We should totally do that. And I remember I printed out like a year's worth of my blogs just to like have topics to talk about, because it was live radio, I have to be ready. And then, and so I'm going and it's live, and then it turned into a segmented show that became really awesome. I would start with like a 10-minute kind of welcome motivational moment, share a cool story about entrepreneurship. Then I would have 2 interviews of entrepreneurs, and then I'd do a wrap up, and I'd have commercial breaks in between. It's a full hour live radio show. Now I do it as a 28-minute pre-recorded show. It's a lot easier, just one guest. But man, I got it. I've been able to meet so many amazing people because of the show, and that was really what kept me doing it, was the connectivity. I have not done as good of a job on content as I could, and that is something we're leaning into here going into 2021. Because again, the primary reason I did it was just it was healthy just to share and connect. And now I'm like, okay, now we need to amplify.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is probably one of my favorite stories on how a podcast start. And we say podcast because obviously the audio goes there, but it's
a podcast now too.
Yeah, but it's a platform, right? At the end of the day, it's a platform. Like we call this our thing show, and we were actually looking into radio about 3 weeks ago, and I want to distill some of the information that you shared, right? Like you started reaching out, and a lot of people are like, how do I reach out, call, ask the people that are there, like what's the way, right? And we literally called in a radio producer that works probably 3 offices down there, and we're like, Gary, how do we actually get on radio? Can we get this show on the radio? Right? Let's see. And you say a radio show that creates leverage. You're like, oh wow, that sparks an interest. You're different, right? And it
is nice to say like I'm on ABC News, right? And so that's a credibility indicator. It's cool for my guests. I can say, hey, you've now been featured on ABC News, like legitimately, not just throwing the picture on your website and pretending. But yeah.
Wow. It's so good. So many exciting thoughts here. Because literally, I just jumped off a phone call with somebody that does recruiting for a lot of companies, right? And they're like, we're trying to get this world out and create conversations. I'm like, you need a platform. Just create a platform. It could be a Zoom call where you distribute. You could distribute anywhere, right? But
and I think that's what I missed the most at the beginning, was really understanding how I should have been leveraged. And what's funny is like I do this for other people, but just again, I should have been leveraging it, really pushing, like, okay, having calls to action in the show, driving them into opt-ins, building an email list. And, but just having the platform has opened ridiculous number of doors for me. Like, it's insane.
You are being incredibly humble with this. I just want to say that you got it done, man. Like that's the most important thing. And the relationships that you probably have been able to build because of that, just like for us in this past like 10 months, have been incredible. So
for example, for us, Tyler, there has been a clear before and after the podcast. Like before, we were literally just struggling with not even with our offer. We didn't know exactly what we wanted to offer. We were all over the place. We didn't feel that, I personally didn't feel that comfortable, talking to people, getting to know people. And the fact of having the everything, and it is a clear after, because after we got the platform is when we finally started implementing and focusing not only on the service side but building the relationships, right? And these relationships have been the ones that have allowed us to scale in a sense, right? And gathered new eyeballs, if you want to put it that way, new attention. I mean, we have you right here today thanks to Bart Miller, right? That we managed to have on the podcast before. He was like episode, 56? And we had Bart Miller because we connected with someone before that introduced us to Bart. So it's incredible what could happen if you have a platform and leverage those relationships.
For the first 2 years of my show, one of the main ways that I would get guests is I would say, what am I trying to learn in my business? And then I would put out a thing saying, hey, I'm looking for experts in what Tyler needs to learn. And then I would have those people come on the show and share all of their secrets that they would normally charge like major consulting fees or wouldn't even meet with you. So I mean, the number of like best-selling authors and top performing entrepreneurs and all these things like that are just really cool people that they just don't at the time they didn't have a platform or a way to share. So they were like, yeah, I'll come on your show and share it. Like I never could have picked up the phone and said, hey, Tim Ferriss, can I ask you 30 minutes worth of questions? Like never. But he reached out to me. Like his team reached out to me and said, hey, Tim's got his new book coming out. He'd love to be on your show as part of his book tour. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to talk to one of my all-time mentors and like see about getting him on the show. Yes, whatever.
I would have loved to see the behind the scenes on that phone call. You know, as soon as you hung up, what happened after, that would have been incredible.
Yeah. Well, the random curveball in it is about a week before I had gotten a cease and desist from his legal team. But totally unrelated. Like my other business was doing something like we were getting a cookbook made and he was, so we were using a term that he used in one of his like blog posts. And then he was coming out with the 4-Hour Chef, which was starting to use some of his own terms. So they were just doing their IP protection, right? They were just doing normal stuff. But like the timing and the irony of like, hey, cease and desist, and hey, we'd love to be on your show. And I'm like, okay, two worlds, we'll keep them separate.
Such a contradicting image in there. It's like, which one do I go? But I bet it was amazing. And what year did you interview him?
I think that was 2013.
So about 2 years after, like 3 years after reading his book, 2 years after you started your podcast, you get the chance to connect with him. Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was very similar with Todd Brown.
Cool.
Yeah, and he was episode 40, right? And there's he's probably gonna come back a second time, and so many people, right? Like, what's the opportunity to be able to have that conversation with people like him, people like you, right? And I think that shows the power of that platform. And then what you do after, right? It can tie down to your personal life on the relationship side. It could tie down to the business side if there's a mutual beneficial opportunity there for everybody involved. So there's so much there to unpack, and I highly encourage people to start, putting their message out there. Like, remove the friction. Like we talked with Tyler here, he does it very well in his business. He identifies exactly what he's really good at. He's willing to take risks, right? And these are all the things that we talk about content and to put it out there, right? Like, there's a reason we use certain tools to remove the friction. Like, that's why we use StreamYard. It's very simple to use. We were trying Ecamm Live earlier and it did not work. So we're like, let's go back to StreamYard, right? Like, remove the friction for execution. So yeah.
I do have a question that just popped in my head, right? Because again, we were talking about how this past year you focus in your agency side of things, and your superpower is going from 0 to 100K per month, right? Of course, you are more into the e-commerce side of things, but I'm guessing with the agency, you have, a lot of input from a lot of people that you're helping out. What is, the biggest challenge maybe that is holding someone from going from 0 to 100K per month, right? And again, I'm going off the topic too of what does Luis wants to learn here? And now I'm like, I do want to learn that.
So if I had to like ascribe a percentage, I would say like, okay, 70% of the time it's the entrepreneur's mindset, right? And that could be a limiting belief or a false ego, right? Like I'm not willing to learn because I don't want anyone to know that I don't already know this. It's like, well, if you want to go from A to B, like, you've got to admit you've never been to B yet. And so why don't you talk to someone that's already been there and like, and have some humility. So or the limiting belief of I'm not capable. I don't know how to do it. Right. I would say that double-edged sword of mindset is probably the biggest two factors. And then even sometimes there's people who are humble, they're open-minded, they're ready to learn, and they just haven't been able to find the skill or the person or the connectivity yet. That's just circumstance. And sometimes the reality is not everyone is getting the same opportunities, right? Some people are born next to a guy who can be their mentor, and they meet him and they know him and they're going to move faster. And that's just the reality of circumstance. And then the very last thing I would say that holds people back is just the fear of taking action. Like, they just aren't doing it. Like, and so you look at a lot of businesses that say they want to grow, but then you ask them, well, what are they doing to grow? And they're like, nothing. And like, it's like, well, then you don't want to grow. You want the results, but you don't want to go through the pain of getting there. I mean, you guys are athletes, right? It's like, hey, you're not gonna become like a top scoring striker if you never train, right?
Yeah.
So like, you got to go get on the pitch and train.
Absolutely. First of all, I appreciate you putting it in soccer terms. That means a lot, Tyler.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I was an athlete. Right now I'm more like the ball, so I'm about to roll down the field instead of like running down the field. But it's okay. It just serves as motivation for me. You know, people that follow us know the story. It's okay. We don't have to go there.
we
Hey,
need to
you could be big and popular like Barca and about to go bankrupt. So
Yeah, I don't remind me. That's my team, man. Come on. I love how don't talk about Arsenal.
Yeah, this is gonna be another episode.
Part 2 soccer.
The sports section of it.
yeah.
So Tyler, how do you? Okay, I love it. I love the mindset. I especially love the ego side of it. I think we're so tied to that. And personally, I think people are starting to realize more, and there's been more conversations about that. I do think there's a lot of resistance into that because a lot of people that start from zero, I feel they have the belief that it's all about tactics and strategies, right? And honestly, like, that was me, honestly. And I'm sure my brother, a little bit less than me probably, but 4 years ago when we were starting and we had the sticker company and the t-shirt company, and then we started the digital marketing agency, I was like, what are the strategies to make all these sales? How can I sit in the couch eating chips in my underwear and make a bunch of money, right? And it turns out it's definitely not like that. Now I'd like to talk more about principles, right? These principles of success. And definitely the mindset comes into those principles. What have you noticed that have been those principles for you inside of your business that have guided you to where you are right now?
In the end, bad traffic will convert if the offer is great. Amazing traffic won't convert on a crappy offer. So in the end, you have to make something or provide a service that people actually want. That's number one. Make something amazing. Quit doing crappy stuff. Like, make whatever you're doing amazing. Start there and then work backwards about, okay, now how do I get this in front of the people that need to see it? Yeah. And that can be done a million different ways. But like, I think sometimes people are like, and I made the mistake early on in my e-com business. I need more traffic. And I'm like, man, what if I could just double my conversions? Like, I'm already getting people to the site. What if I just made the product better? Like, what if I made the experience better? What if I had people buying again because it was such a great experience, right? And I think sometimes people skip that and they're just like, I need traffic. I just need Facebook needs to send me all their traffic. And I'm like, well, they may not let you even run an ad on their platform. So make sure the product's good enough that wherever you do get traffic from, it's going to be good.
Absolutely. I want to relay that to content because in here, when we're creating content, that is the offer, right? This is a product. And a lot of people, our perception was that if the production was amazing, we had a quality piece of content. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, I'm sure a lot of people have been victims in here of watching this amazingly produced video that lasts maybe 8 minutes, and a minute in, you're like, oh, I'm done with it. Like, next video, I don't really care about it. And it's because
it didn't matter that the sound quality was good, that the color lighting was right. It didn't matter because the person was saying garbage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And that's what happened to us at first. We're like, we just need that quality, was that exterior thing. And when we started 45 Live, I'm bringing it back again, what we started telling ourselves was quality of the message over quality of the production. I mean, how many webinars have I sit through and watch a talking head for an hour and a half, right? I'm like, that's a piece of quality content right there. Is delivering a lot of value and is keeping my attention for a long time. And then a lot of the times I was buying right after. So if we approach content with the same principle that you just talked about, right? Do amazing stuff that people really want to either consume or be a part of. That is a starting point. That is a great starting point. So, and I love how we had George Brand in the show, and he was telling us, like, every time I write an email, I ask myself the question, would I send this to my grandma? And I was like, that is such a good question. Like, would I send this episode to my grandma? Absolutely, Tyler.
We would.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't understand a word because they don't know English, but it's fine. It's still good. I will still send it.
Yeah.
I will take that as your action point, Tyler. Like, do amazing stuff, right? And reiterate and listen to your audience and go back and be like, how can I make this more amazing so people can buy more from it, right? Like that's the reasons of why we offer a service and people keep coming back month after month, right? Like we really focus on that experience. And then after that, you can really focus on that. So I love that. Unless you want to add something else to something.
No, I want to be clear because I feel like in one breath I said, it's just important to start. Like, don't wait to be perfect to start. And then the other breath I'm saying, but be amazing. And that can create a little bit of like a stress point for the people who are not good starters. And I think it's important to understand the direction has to be towards amazing. But you have to start. You won't ever get to amazing. You won't get to great content if you don't start learning how to tell stories or just even practice. So it's like the way I always tell people is like, hey, treat the first round as like a beta. Like, hey, this is a practice run, right? But just do it, and then be like, okay, but my goal down the road is I know that it needs to become amazing. Like, so don't create such a big hurdle, right? Remove the friction, get into momentum. Don't create such a big hurdle that has to be perfect.
Yeah.
But just know that it can't, like, you might suck at your message, like you might suck at the delivery of the story, but the message and the intention has to be amazing.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. I mean, you would have seen the first episodes that we did. It was literally in that corner right there with like this little table, and it was just the camera in our faces. Obviously, the show has evolved and it will continue to evolve. But if we didn't do that, then we would not have a show, right? Or do the awesome things and the connections that we have now. So
actually, with our second guest, we had like so many technical issues. It was so bad, but we're still doing it. And I still to this day don't know how that guest
thank you, Marley,
throughout the conversation with us. It was amazing. Before you deliver the final ninja question, Tyler, I'm curious, do you have any specific or favorite questions that you ask your guests when you have them on your show?
So I have a starting question and an ending question. Which one do you want?
Oh, give them both. We're here to learn either way.
So my starting question is always, when was that moment that you first realized you were an entrepreneur? Right? So am I asking myself or am I asking it to you?
Well, no, I was going to ask it to you, but you told us that it was when you were...
You already know, 5 years old. I didn't see the world. And I didn't realize it then, but I realized later, I just don't see the world like my siblings or my parents. I see the world differently. And then the second question is that I ask after I end the show, and then I come back for like a secret question, and all of those answers, including like Alex Hormozi and everything, are available only through a really small subscription fee that is launching next month. So
sweet. Okay. We're going to definitely plug this in. So tell us the question, then we'll plug it in.
Yeah. So the question then I say, okay, imagine that you're sitting down with your best friend and they're just at a really dark spot of their life. They're feeling super stuck. And what is that one piece of advice that's going to help get them back into momentum? And so I ask that because I think sometimes a lot of our advice comes from a place of when we're in momentum or where things are good, or we're talking about from where we are now instead of, it's easy to talk when things are going well, right? Yeah. But if we put ourselves back into that state of like when we were in despair or when things were really tough, that's where a lot of people are coming to us needing guidance, is when it's not going great. And so for me, the answer to that question is like, okay, like step one is eliminate, like it actually, I'm going to go back to 4-hour work week. Step one is define, what is it that you actually want out of life? Yeah. Strip away what your parents told you needed to be. Strip away what your spouse thinks you're supposed to do. Strip away what you've identified yourself as for the last 30 years or whatever. Like, what is it that you want, right? Then eliminate everything that doesn't support that. Okay. And once you've eliminated like anything that's going to pull you away from that dream, then you can say, okay, like I'm left with the things that can get me back into a place where I want to actually be. What is the life I want? What am I defining for myself? And then like, you've got to then create ways like in 4-hour work week, the next step is automate and liberate. Like, how do I put things in an automated path so that I'm more likely to get to my goal? And that's, all kinds of little things, but that's what I would do. I'd say step one, define what it is you even want. Because otherwise we get in this horrible feedback loop of being stuck in just persisting of survival. Like instead of ever moving to thrive, like we shouldn't stay in survival mode. Like this is 2021. We're supposed to like be doing things better. So shake off the caveman, right? And like, let's live a life of luxury if that's what you want. Like, figure it out. So that's my answer.
I love it, Tyler. And you know what? You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking that we should actually cut this part off right here. And I'm going to put in a segment. Guys, if you want to hear Tyler's answer to this question, you should go to, and then Tyler, where should they go?
Where are we sending them?
Yeah, so it'll be from tylerjorgenson.com. I'll have a place there where people can sign up and get all of those secret questions from about over 150 guests.
Wow.
Oh, that's going to be so
amazing.
Well, like we said here on the show, so juicy, so good. There we go.
So juicy. I like it.
Let's go.
So Tyler, I'm going to do that. I'm actually going to chop your question and I'm going to send it to you so you can put it in there. I mean, it's still here in Facebook Live for those that, are willing to come in here, dig into the archives and check it out. But we'll do that for the podcast. It'll be fun.
Tyler, last question. This is our last question. Is where will you be if you did not publish?
I wouldn't be doing this kind of cool stuff because I wouldn't have connected with you and that sort of thing. I think the biggest impact that publishing has done for me is consistently help me find my voice. Right? Like it's having conversations like this where you say something that gives yourself chills. You're like, oh crap, that's like one of my banner moments. Like I need to say that more and communicate that more. And so I think that's one of the reasons I like Clubhouse. I think a lot of people that don't have their own platforms get on stage and practice. And you've got to get your reps in if you want to figure out you got to find your voice.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the big thing. It's helped me.
Wow. Thank you so much for that answer. It's exactly the same effect that it's been having on us. Are you sleeping? Are you sleeping with Clubhouse? Are you able to sleep?
I recently have I've minimized my notifications. I even turned them off for a week because I love it, but there's a lot going on. And so it's not my highest priority, but you've got to, in your life, right? You got to define what you need and eliminate things that don't support. Be deliberate, right?
Beautiful. Yeah. Take action, execute, remove friction and continue to do it. Tyler, thank you so much for your time, your amazing answers and a great conversation. I hope it was great for you too. Anything that you want to add that we might have missed? No, my big call to action right now, it's 2021 going into this year. Just realize whatever it is that you want to achieve, know that that's possible and more. Go after it, chase your dreams, be crazy. Don't be afraid of risk. Attack it. Yeah. All right, guys. On that note,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Content Profit Podcast. Go ahead and subscribe. Smash that subscribe button and follow us on social media at BizBrosCo. That is right. And if you find this episode impactful and you want to be a ninja just like Tyler, please don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. Thank you. Bye, guys.